Today, we delve into the contentious debates surrounding the leadership of Field Marshal Douglas Haig during World War I. Haig's decisions and strategies have sparked heated discussions among historians and scholars. He's inspired numerous discussions and debates. Was Haig a villain and the butcher of the Somme? Or was he a hero, helping defeat the Germans? Let's find out today. So, who was Douglas Haig? Douglas Haig, or the first Earl of Haig, was born in June 19, 1861, Edinburgh, and died in January 29, 1928, London. He was a graduate of the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. Haig fought in the Sudan War and in the South African War, and held administrative posts in India. While assigned to the War Office as Director of Military Training, he helped the War Minister, Richard Burden Haldon, establish a general staff, formed a territorial army as a useful reserve, and organized an expeditionary force for a future war in the European mainland. On the outbreak of World War I in August 8, 1914, Haig led the First Corps of the British Expeditionary Force, or BEF, to northern France, and early in 1915, he became commander of the First Army. On December 17 of that year, he succeeded Sir John French, afterwards First Earl of Ypres, as commander-in-chief of the BEF. So, what arguments are there for Douglas Haig being a good leader? Well, firstly, strategic vision. Unlike popular belief, he recognized early that the war would be prolonged and advocated for a large, well-equipped army, shaping the British Expeditionary Force into an effective fighting unit. Number 2, technological adoption. Unlike what many people think, Haig embraced new military technologies, including tanks and air power, demonstrating adaptability despite his traditionalist roots. For example, he saw machine guns in use during a war in Egypt in 1899 and commented on how effective they were. After which, he actually visited the Enfield factory where machine guns were made and wrote a report on how the army needed more if there was another war in the future. Next, he embraced innovations like tanks and aerial reconnaissance, pushing for their integration into military strategies despite initial setbacks. For example, he recognized their potential to break the stalemate on the Western Front, particularly during the Battle of the Somme in 1916, where tanks were first deployed. Despite mechanical failures and limited initial success, Haig believed that wherever the tanks advanced, we took our objectives, and pushed for their continued production. His support for tank warfare culminated in the significant tank assault at Cambrai in 1917. Aiming for a breakthrough against German forces, Haig's leadership saw the establishment of training programs that improved the British Army's tactical capabilities by 1917, reflecting a shift towards combined arms warfare. Next, Allied coordination. He played a crucial role in establishing a unified Allied command structure, which was vital for coordinating efforts against Germany. Even though he was an unwilling subordinate of the French general Robert Nivelle, supreme Allied commander on the Western Front. However, in March 1918, Haig secured the appointment of another French general, Ferdinand Foch, as an Allied generalissimo. The two men worked well together, and Haig exercised full tactical command of the British armies, which had not been the case under Nivelle. After helping to stop the last German offense of the war, Haig frequently engaged in strategic discussions with Foch and the other commanders, aligning British operations with French and American forces. His ability to adapt British strategies to fit into the broader Allied framework was vital, which led to the successful offenses of 1918. Haig also played a pivotal role in establishing a combined command among the Allies, particularly with French General Ferdinand Foch, who became the supreme commander of Allied forces in 1918. This structure was crucial for coordinating operations across different national armies. However, what arguments are there for Haig being a bad leader? Well, firstly, Haig's adherence to outdated tactics such as a frontal assaulter and mass infantry charges led to staggering casualties and little strategic gain. The high casualty rates at battles like the Somme and the Pasquale have been criticized as indicative of poor leadership. For example, Douglas Haig still believed that cavalry was essential in battle, even though the new form of warfare, which is popular during World War I, trench warfare, did not benefit cavalry, as large cannons and armies would shred through the horses before they can even get close to the enemy lines and surround them. As they're so dug in, Douglas Haig that cavalry just couldn't work. Next, His distant and often out-of-touch leadership style alienated frontline commanders and troops, leading to a disconnect between strategic goals and the reality on the ground. For example, as you all know, usually back then, the army commanders' trends were usually far behind Allied lines, which meant information took a long time to reach them. So, decisions they made using such information were usually, and when they were passed back down, they were usually outdated and wrong, as the information they were given was completely outdated, and the time to take information back also took a long time. This resulted in ineffective orders, which confused the Allied soldiers, and this pretty much hurt their chances. Next, Haig's handling of the war's human cost has been questioned, with attitude of callousness towards the suffering of his men, and a failure to adequately address logistical and medical challenges. As many people believe that since Haig was so back behind the lines, he didn't really have a good understanding of what was going on regarding his men. He didn't know the suffering of them, so he was simply an out-of-touch general who gave orders while hiding behind his safe little shell. In conclusion, the legacy of Douglas Haig as a leader is a complex one, marked by both achievements and failures. While some commend his strategic vision and ultimate victory on the battlefield, others criticize his costly tactics and apparent disregard for the welfare of his troops. Whether Haig was a good or bad leader ultimately depends on the criteria by which his leadership is judged and the perspective from which it is viewed. My opinion, Douglas Haig was a good leader. However, I believe even though he did embrace new technology somewhat, he also had many failures adjusting to new military tactics. But I believe that, however, regarding his failures in military tactics, his adherence to new technology and want to use it, I believe makes him an okay leader. And I believe he is not the butcher of the Somme. Thank you.